Hi everyone, I'm Abby from Abbi Kirsten Collections. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to make beginner-friendly giant paper flowers. I love paper flowers. If you know anything about me, I am a paper flower fanatic. This design here is my Everly style template. It's one of the first ones I ever designed over 10 years ago. This is the best style for quick giant paper balloons that can be a statement for any event or even just dress up a room in your home. Nursery decor for these is really trendy. Be sure to grab my templates for these via the link provided below in the video description. If you're on my blog, you can just scroll up to the supply section and you'll find it there. Whether you're using a cutting machine or you choose to cut by hand with scissors, I've got you covered with both printable PDFs and SVG cut files. So let's go ahead and review the supplies you'll need to make these beautiful paper flowers. You can also find things like my paper resources and additional links for supplies in that blog post I mentioned that's linked below this video, or you can just head over to my blog, abbykirstencollections.com, and you'll find some great resources there. Okay, so let's go over the supplies you're going to need for this Everly style giant paper flower. Like I said, this is a great beginner flower. You can make these rather quickly because they're not intricate or hard at all to cut out, whether you're cutting with scissors or if you're using a cutting machine. You can do either or. You will need a pair of scissors regardless if you're using a cutting machine because we're going to need that to cut some slits at the bottom of our petals here. You're going to need 65-pound cardstock. You can go up to 80-pound. I recommend staying with 65 if you can for best results. You're going to need some hot glue sticks and a hot glue gun. I use a high temp hot glue gun. And you can find links to all of this stuff in the blog post that goes with this video tutorial. If you're on YouTube, that is linked in the video description below. If you're in the blog post right now, scroll up to the supply section and you'll find links for all of these resources that I'm using here. Lastly, you'll also need something to curl your petals with. You can use numerous things such as a pencil, a pen, a thin wood dowel. You can use a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch wood dowel to curl your petals with. So anything of a similar type of instrument you can use to curl your petals with. I like to use a pencil or a wood dowel usually. And that's what I'll be using in this tutorial. Okay, so those are the supplies you need. Pretty basic, nothing too fancy there. And you're going to need to cut out a certain number of petals. So in this video, I'm making an extra large flower. You can also make large, medium, and small flowers using the same templates. If you want to make a large flower, start with the large petal and only use large through extra small. If you want to make it extra large, which I'm going to show in this video, you'll start with the extra large petal and you'll use all of the petals. So you can easily downsize by subtracting a layer of petals. You can still always add an extra layer of petals in large. If you're making a large flower, you can make 2 layers of large petals to keep the flower full, but you still would have an overall smaller flower. I am using a 6-sided petal base that comes with these templates, and we are going to cut out 6 petals per size. I have other bases in my shop, 7-sided and 8-sided petal perfect bases, but I'm going to show the 6-sided one in this tutorial, and that's ultimately your preference. If you want to do just 6 petals per layer, 7 or 8 petals per layer, you can use the corresponding base if you want to grab those additional bases. But the 6-sided base is included in this. So, like I said, you're going to need 6 in each size, 1 for each side of this base here. In order to shape our petals, we are going to cut out everything, and you're going to need to cut about 1.5 inches, maybe up to 2 inches of a slit at the bottom. It does not need to be perfect. Don't worry about getting an exact measurement. You just want it to have enough room that you can overlap easily without creasing or bending your paper at all. So once you cut that about 1/2 inch slit at the bottom there, you're going to add a little bit of glue along one side and you're going to slightly overlap. Now notice I said slightly. Don't overlap to where this corner is meeting all the way over here, or your petals probably won't come together very well when you're making your flower on this base. So just slightly overlap so that it's closed. And then to curl it, there's lots of different ways you could curl this. You could curl it backwards, forwards, inward at an angle. I like to curl this one backward at a slight angle. So I'm curling back at a slight angle there. And you can kind of do it really deep, or you can just do a gentle one. I've even had lots of people who don't curl at all, and they just make the flower after they've done the little overlap to give it some, dimension so the petal's not flat. So experiment with what you like, but that is how I do mine for this tutorial. Now, as you can see, I've already prepped the rest of my petals here, so we're gonna go ahead and start assembling. All the petals are prepped exactly the same way as I just showed you with this one. We're gonna get started with the extra large petals first. And like I said a few minutes ago, each side of this 6-sided base represents a place where we're going to put a petal. And this just helps us keep our flower even, and it's super helpful for beginners. So to start, I'm going to add a little bit of glue to the bottom back side of one of my petals, and then I'm going to place it on one side of the 6-sided base. Now, I brought my petal in a little bit, maybe about 1/2 inch in or so. You don't want it to be all the way in line with the edge because then your flower might be a little floppy. So make sure you're bringing that base petal in about 1/2 inch towards the center. So that way, you have good stability with your petal and it's not falling over on you. We're going to continue now with our next petal. I'm placing my next petal on the next side of the base there, the 6-sided base. And continue with your third petal. Now, if you don't put the petal down in the right spot the first time, you feel like the angle is completely off, that's okay. Lift the petal up gently and do it again. I pull petals off all the time to get that angle just right, so don't be afraid to do that. I've been doing this for years and I still make mistakes all of the time. Right, there's my 4th petal. And the 5th petal. And then we're down to our last petal here. What I like to do is I gently lift up the one corner of the very first petal we started with. That way I can tuck the last side in under the first petal we started with. It really helps make the flower look a lot more seamless if we do it that way. All right, so I'm going to tuck that one underneath. And there we go. And then if you want, you can add a little glue to push that right back down, just like that. Okay, so there we have our first layer of extra large petals. Now I'm looking here, I just want to give you an example of what I mean when I say don't be afraid to pull the petal up and do it again. I don't like the way this one is sitting, and there's absolutely no reason I can't lift it up real careful and get that angle looking a little bit better in my, for my preference. You can really get very specific with your angles, or you can just be more relaxed with it, and that's fine either way. And if you're a beginner, be gracious with yourself, because trust me, nobody gets it right the first time. All right, so I like that angle just a little bit better now. I feel like my petals are a little bit more symmetrical. Okay, so that was an easy fix. And now we're gonna move on to our large petals. To add in our large petals, I'm just gonna add some glue to the bottom back side of one, and I'm going to place it so that the large petal is falling in between the 2 extra large petals that are below it. You're gonna go around with all 6 of your extra large petals exactly the same way. If you were doing a 7 or an 8-sided base, you would of course be using 7 or 8 petals per layer. So your petals would be a little tighter together. So if you're looking for an extra full flower, then you may want to explore the possibility of doing more petals. Now I'm just going to lift that one side up just a little bit so I can tuck this last petal. Just like that. All right, so now we have all of our large petals added in there, and we're going to move on to the medium. And As you've probably already guessed, we are going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to add those medium petals in, and we're going to place them so that they're in between the two large. You'll go all the way around exactly the same way until you've used all 6 of your medium petals. Now, as you move towards the center, you are going to have less and less space to work with, and that's normal. We do want a nice closed flower, a nice pretty looking flower. So you'll notice that your petals will be overlapping a little bit more, and that is totally fine. Exactly how it's supposed to be. All right, just going to slightly lift up that edge there and tuck this last petal in for our medium petals. My last medium petal here. All right, there we go. So I have my extra large, large, and medium petals all done there. And now we have 2 more layers, small and extra small. And we are gonna literally just do exactly the same thing. It has a very systematic pattern to it. I design a lot of my flowers this way. Some of my other designs like roses and such, they're a little bit different because their centers are so much different than a simple flower like this. But a lot of my simple petal shapes like this, they all follow a very repetitive and basic method that can honestly be applied to any petal shape. I've applied this exact tutorial to numerous different petal shapes, probably over 100 different petal shapes. And really changing the shape of the petal is the only thing that ultimately is changing the look of the flower. The system of how many petals we use and how we layer them in, it's all very similar. So just something to keep in mind if you're wanting to play around with different petals. All right, I'm going to add in this last one, tucking it a little bit underneath that first petal that we started with. My last small petal. Okay, there we go. And finally, we're going to add in our extra small. This flower is the first flower I ever designed, my first giant flower I ever designed over 10 years ago. I got started back in 2011 as like a paper flower crafter, but I had been crafting a few years before that. And I really got into them around 2011. So this is the first one I ever designed, and it's still honestly one of my favorites because it's so simple, but it's so pretty. Just the round petal shape just comes together always so pretty. And if you make a lot of these in different sizes for a backdrop or, you know, some nursery decor, it really is just oftentimes the simpler something is, the more pretty something can be. And that's one of the reasons I just love the simplistic petal shape of this. And it also makes it very beginner friendly. So I'm tucking in that last extra small petal. And if you want to play with your petals, if your petals come a little uncurled, that's normal, and it's totally fine. You can see mine do the same thing a little bit. The basic thing that we're aiming for here is that everything just is standing up and looking pretty, nothing's flat. So there we go. We've added all of our petals in, extra large, large, medium, small, and extra small. Now for the center, there's lots of ways to finish off your center. I like to create a Pom Pom Center for a style like this, so I'm going to show you that next. Okay, so for our Pom Pom Center here for the flower, you can make these in several different ways. You can hand cut these with scissors, and I'm going to link a resource if you're cutting by hand for how to hand cut these with scissors. For this tutorial, let's just assume we already have our templates cut out, whether it be cutting by hand or using a cutting machine like I used for this template that is included with this Everly flower package. So what you want to do here is there's a couple different things we can do. We can fold this over one time, and we can fold it so that it's completely mirrored to the other side and glued directly along the edge. Or we can do what I call is a like swirl flower center. Notice with this design here, it almost looks like the Pom Pom Center is kind of going in a swirl. And there's a little bit of a different technique to achieve this. So what you're going to want to do is we're going to add some glue down here, and we're actually going to offset so that it's not perfectly in line, that it's actually offset a little bit. And that's how we achieve that swirl look. I have some other videos on centers. I'll be sure to link them in the video description if you're interested in seeing some different variations. So I've added some glue there, and like I said, I've offset it, so I'm not aligning these two edges. I'm sort of pulling it down. And then go ahead and add glue the rest of the way down. Now, I cut out 2 of these. You could do 3 or even 4. Usually I find 2 or 3 is perfect. That's all you really need. This one here is 3, and this one's going to be 2. So for your larger flowers, if you're doing like an extra large, you might want to go up to 3, just if you want a really full center. I'm going to be adding this center to this large version over here. All right, so let's repeat that with this piece over here. You can do these in any colors that you like. And this is just a really simple way to finish off the center of our flower. Now, like I said, I cut these out with my cutting machine. This is an SVG file that I've included in the templates that are linked below this specific video. But if you do not have a cutting machine, you're cutting by hand, make sure you visit the link below to see how I cut the templates just from paper and using paper and scissors. That's all I use to make them. So I just give you a little simple technique of how to make these templates for yourself out of the paper and scissors if you do not have a cutting machine. All right, so we have both of those done, and we're going to start at one end, and we're going to begin rolling it inwards and adding a little bit of glue as we go. So I'm going to start rolling from one end, give it 3 or 4 turns, and then add a little more glue and continue. As you're going, try and just push the bottom and the top together, because it'll naturally want to kind of almost lift out from the center. Just try and keep it as even as you can to the bottom for best results. And these two take a little bit of practice, so if you don't get it right the first time, it's okay, just try it again. All right, so there's the first one done. Tuck that up, and you can see that the center has kind of started to swirl a little bit there as we're getting, further out from the center. And now I'm going to add this next one on, and I'm just going to literally continue right where I left off. So right where I glued that very last end there closed, I'm going to start from that same point so that it stays even. So I'm going to add some glue, and I'm going to place the next one on. And this is what you would do for as many as you want to add. It gets a little tough after 4, so usually I stop at 3 or 4. For this one, I'm going to go just with these 2. And if you decide you want yours to be a little fuller, then you would just continue exactly the same way, and you'd add another pom-pom swirl around again. I'm just going to keep going here, adding a little bit of glue. Last bit for this one. Okay. And then once you get done, just kind of fluff it out just a little bit, because it'll be a little bit hard pressed because you've been curling it. So just press with your fingers gently and kind of fan it out, fluff it a little bit each direction. Okay, there we go. So that is one that is rolled with 2, and this one here is 3. So if you want to add one more, then you would just continue the same way and add one more. And then of course you'll just glue it right into the center of your flower. The bottom can sometimes be a little challenging to get glue on just because of the way it's curled. You can add glue directly, or you can also just fill some glue in here and then place it on top, whichever you prefer. I usually just drop a bunch of glue right on the center and then place it down in. There we go. So our giant paper flower, our Everly style giant paper flower is complete. And like I said with the downsizing, super easy to downsize. So this is our extra large here. This measures about 17 inches wide. And this one here is our large. So I just subtracted the use of the extra large petal to downsize to the large flower. And then this one here is a medium where I just used the 3 petal sizes and I subtracted use of that to create 3 different sizes. Super easy to downsize. These are definitely the easiest giant flower I have. So super beginner friendly. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video tutorial and I will see you all next time.